Elsha of the Infinite versus Anya Falconwrath. And we've got some early control there, as well as Thousand Year Storm. We don't have a lot of mana, but we can hopefully get into Windfall. Yeah, especially if we get rid of a lot of cards in hand, so let's keep that. We'll get down a blue source first of all. Go for a Steam Vents. No turn 1 play from our opponent. We do get into that third land that we wanted though, so let's just play that and pass the turn over. Most likely going in for a Swan Song or a Force of Will next turn if our opponent does something that we're not happy with. Okay, a Vamp Tutor. You don't typically want to counter the tutor, you want to counter what they tutor for, and hopefully we can do that with the cards that are in hand. Unless they went for a land. They've gone for a Dust Bowl first of all, followed by a Mana Crypt. Yeah, I think I'm actually going to try and slow my opponent down here by going for a Force of Will on that Crypt. No doubt that's what they tutored for. They wouldn't have been able to get their commander down this turn though, even if the Crypt had landed. So they're having to hardcast the Talisman of Indulgence. Yeah, so they were looking at their commander this turn. Can't counter that, unfortunately. And this Windfall is actually going to feed our opponent a lot of cards here, so not necessarily the right move to make. We get into Reliquary Tower. Yeah, I think we're okay to play out the Shock Land in tapped. And then we will pass the turn over and hope that we get into some more mana. Our opponent's commander comes down. That does have haste, so they can loot with that straight away if they want to. Or rummage, I should say. You discard first, so that would be referred to as a rummage. But deciding not to do anything. Passing over to us, we get Grim Monolith. So let's play this out. And then we'll go Grim Monolith. And that means that we can get down Thousand Year Storm next turn if we want to. So let's pass yet again. And then deciding to go for Squee, Goblin Nabob, so this Windfall might actually net us some cards here if our opponent keeps drawing. That is card advantage effectively with Squee, because it goes back into the hand at the beginning of each upkeep. Or each of my opponent's upkeeps, I should say. Bojuka Bog exiling our graveyard. It might have been relevant. We do shuffle the graveyard back into our library with some wheels. Deciding to just hold up Squee again by the looks of it. Alright, a Rift. Might be a good tempo play to hurt our opponent. But I think we've played pretty slow this game, so let's go in for the Thousand Year Storm and we can still hold up Swan Song. Not too likely that a Rakdos deck will be able to deal with an enchantment. And this time, deciding to discard something different. That is Asylum Visitor, which can be cast for its madness cost. And Asylum Visitor is card draw when you've got an empty hand, I think, or something like that. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw and lose a life, so they are after us having no cards in hand, seemingly. And then going for another in Squee, Goblin Nabob. They do get to untap their commander if they discard a Madness card, which Asylum Visitor is. And again, Squee going back into the hand at the beginning of the upkeep. Fabled Passage, that's a new fetch from Eldraine. And I think it comes in untapped, the basic that they can go for with that. Yep, sure does. If you control 4 or more lands, it comes in untapped. Or specifically, I think it untaps when it enters. Yes, untap that land, so it would trigger something like Mesmeric Orb, if that's of any relevance in your meta. Now, going for a Dust Bowl onto our Steam Vents. So we'll just tap that down for blue mana. And they are up to 6 cards in hand, so I think going for this Windfall is a good idea. And then swinging in at us for 3 points of damage. Okay, Fact or Fiction we cannot cast. Let's go for the Windfall here. We'll draw 6 cards with this. And we will get no copies with the Thousand Year Storm. Our opponent discards a Madness card. Which one is that? Fiery Temper. so they can decide whether or not they want to cast that now. They do have an untap trigger on their commander at the moment, so they might tap in response. They do, deciding to discard a land there to draw a card. And now they'll get the untap trigger to resolve. And now we'll see if they can cast Fiery Temper. I can't remember what this card does. Oh, it's 3 damage, so it's a lightning bolt. They might as well go for that, I suppose. And they do. 3 damage to us. Now, they obviously discarded the Squee. We knew about that. There's Mishra's Factory. A Victimize is good to get rid of, as is Imperial Seal. This is one of those cases where a wheel has actually gotten rid of more decent cards than it has drawn them into. Yeah, got rid of a Demonic Tutor as well, so 2 tutors. Let's go for Swords to Plowshares, and our opponent's commander is good, because they'll have to drop a land and replay their commander next turn if they want to do anything with said commander. So let's just Swords here, and we'll get a copy of the Swords as well, thanks to going for the Windfall previously. Going to discard something in response here. Discarding a Blood Crypt this time. And then this copy of the sword is going on a different creature, of course. So we're getting rid of 2 creatures with 2 Swords to Plowshares. They'll gain some life, but they will lose their creatures on board as well. Squee going into our opponent's hand again. If we can make use of 2 wares, then that would be really good for us. Probably go for either Opt or Preordain first, and then go to cast this. Yep, there we are, there's a Sol Ring. So if we can really slow our opponent's mana down, that would be very good for us. Again, blowing up one of our lands, so very much hoping to get into a red source here. We do not. So let's go for Preordain, scry 2, draw 1. And we'll hope to get into a red source that we can play this turn. We do, that's really good. Mystical Tutor I would quite like as well, so let's put that on top, then draw into the mountain. And then we can go like this and go for where. And it is where that we want, isn't it? Yes, destroy artifact. We'll get to destroy 2 artifacts here. Go after the talisman first. And then after this, we'll be able to go for 2 copies of Opt. So we'll get rid of the Sol Ring and the talisman here. Our opponent is now going to be nowhere near casting their commander. They don't have a Sol Ring or a Mana Crypt available to them. They might be able to go for an Ancient Tomb though. And then we will go for Opt. And we'll get 3 Opts. So that is scry 3 times and draw 3 times. Mystical Tutor can go on top. We've played a land for the turn, so we can't play Sulphur Falls, but we will, we'll play it next turn, so keep that on top as well. And then Brainstorm is excellent. That means we can go Mystical Tutor next turn, or maybe even Fabricate next turn. We'll have to have a think of what we want multiple copies of. I think multiple copies of Fabricate is actually very good, isn't it? We can go in for Sol Ring and Crypt. Okay, a Reiterate. All these cards are really good if we've got mana, but we don't have all that much in this game particularly. Let's go Mystical Tutor. No, we'll go for Brainstorm first. Yeah, I do want multiple copies of Fabricate, I think. I'd like multiple copies of Brainstorm, but let's go for the Brainstorm first. The problem is, if we go for Mystical Tutor and then Fabricate, the thing that we tutored for with the Mystical Tutor will get shuffled away. Let's put Reiterate and Dispel on top. Then we've got a land for next turn. Frantic Search we'll get a copy of. That's actually very good. So let's go for Frantic Search during this turn. And we'll have to remember to tap down mana between resolutions here. Let's get rid of Reiterate and Dispel. Then untap these lands. Then we are holding priority. Let's go blue, blue and red because we're about to untap those. then let the frantic search resolve. There is a Paradox Engine, that's really good. We'll get rid of Capsize here, I think. Capsize and Narset's Reversal. Then the same 3 lands getting untapped. And I think we're okay to go for Fabricate here is alright. We'll get a bunch of copies of Fabricate. Search for some artifacts. Let's go Sol Ring. Then Mana Crypt. And with a Paradox Engine in hand, I think it would be rude not to go for a Mana Vault. Or some kind of coloured. Yeah, let's go for Izzet Signet. Then we'll drop Mana Crypt. We'll drop the Sol Ring. And let's go for Paradox Engine now. And then untap those rocks with the Paradox Engine by playing the Izzet Signet. And then we can just go for Mystical Tutor. Yeah, we don't have enough coloured mana, unfortunately, so let's just leave it there. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have a Vandal Blast here. Land into Vandal Blast wouldn't be good. Nope, just going in for their commander. I thought they had a Vandal Blast there for a second. Deciding to play it out. Let's go for the Mystical Tutor. And we will grab the Time Spiral, I think would be quite good. Yeah, Time Spiral's fine here. We get bolted by the Mana Crypt. Let's drop the Glacial Fortress. And then we tap down all of our rocks in response to casting something when we have a Paradox Engine in play. We'll need another blue mana, so let's get it from that land, and then we'll go for, actually, Time Spiral. I always forget about untapping the lands. It is 6 lands. We have 6 lands. So let's go for some white mana there and some blue mana there. Cast the Time Spiral. 1000 Year Storm will trigger, but we only get 1 copy of that. We're about to get a whole bunch more copies out of 1000 Year Storm, I imagine. And it untaps our rocks as well, thanks to Paradox Engine. Shuffling a bunch of stuff into the library and then drawing a fresh 7. And we'll untap our lands as well. Then let's go. We could set up a bunch of bolts onto our opponent with Lightning Helix here. Let's go Mystical Tutor first of all. We'll get a couple of copies of this, not that we'll make much use out of 2 copies of Mystical Tutor. You do shuffle between each tutor with that. If we could draw at instant speed, we could make use of it. We'll go for some kind of Storm card here. Or do we just want to go for Lightning Bolts? Yeah, Lightning Bolt seems pretty cool. Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix might be able to burn our opponent out of the game. So we'll put Lightning Bolt on top twice. Then we'll go Mox Diamond, and we'll get rid of Muddle the Mixture. Oh, and I forgot to tap mana in response to that. Shouldn't auto-yield to that thing. So hopefully that doesn't hurt us too much. We'll get down the Mox Diamond. Oh, and that's... okay, made a mistake. Twice in a row there. That's the one where you discard a land. It's not the one where you put something underneath it. Okay, let's tap this mana down. I'm starting to rush my plays because I'm very wary that my opponent is being patient. Let's go Felwar Stone. That'll tap for black and red. Do not auto-yield to that, so you don't make that mistake again. Then we will get our commander into play. And in response to that, we'll tap down mana. Then let it resolve, and that obviously nets us mana. This is the reason that Paradox Engine is banned. Then we'll go Lightning Bolt onto our opponent, and we'll get a bunch of copies of that. And we've actually got a Storm card on top as well, so that's noteworthy. Prowess we can auto-yield to, we don't really care about Prowess. We'll get some copies of the Lightning Bolt. So 1 there, 1 there. That's 9 damage to our opponent. Then let's tap the rocks down again in response to the Paradox Engine. then that lightning bolt can resolve and our opponent's down to 20. Then we'll go for Lightning Helix before we go for the Storm card that's actually on top of our deck. I think we get 4 copies here. Again, tapping the rocks down. Get 4 copies of Lightning Helix. That's draining our opponent by 3, 4 times, which is obviously 12. That's a 24 life point swing. And then we get a bunch of Ignite Memories triggers. So let's cast that. Oh, and we've got a Time Twister on top as well, just to rub salt in the wound of our opponent. So not only do we get a bunch of triggers from the 1000 Year Storm, but the Ignite Memories gives itself a bunch of copies as well. And our opponent reveals a card at random and it deals damage to them equal to the CMC of the card revealed. So let's have a look at the reveal zone there. That's 3 damage from Recurring Nightmare, 3 damage from Phyrexian Arena, 2 from Murderous Compulsion, and our opponent goes down to 0 there. Big apologies to my opponent, I didn't realise that they were a friend of the channel, so huge shout out to them for playing that out. That is Troco Spain. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yeah, big thank you to my opponent there, good friend of the channel, allowing us to play that out. They were not looking too good towards the end of the game there. They managed to blow up some of our lands and keep control of the game somewhat, but luckily we managed to get into some of the stuff that we needed. And 1000 Year Storm very much saw us through to victory there. That is exactly what we want to do. We want to keep chaining a bunch of mana and cards together in Time Twisters and Wheel of Fortune to keep us in cards. Go for cantrips to up our Storm count, and then go for either burn effects off of a 1000 Year Storm or an actual Storm card of some kind like we saw there. And yeah, just keep ourselves in cards and burn effectively. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. Again, big thank you to my opponent for playing it out. I'm Tribal Kai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.